It's time for the Margin Matters Minute with Money Man Jason Brown.
All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. Jason Brown here. Today, I am continuing my series of teaching kids about money, and I'm so excited to welcome my special guests, authors, Mr. Dylin Redling and Allison Tom. They are a husband and wife team who are currently living in Oakland, California. And after they both were laid off from their jobs in 2015, they discovered the FIRE movement, which is an acronym that stands for Financial Independence Retiring Early. In 2016, they launched the website retireby45.com to provide inspiration, tips, and resources for retiring early. They both successfully retired in their early 40s, and they've never looked back. Thank you so much, Dylin and Allison, for joining us. And today they're sharing their thoughts on their new book, Investing for Kids. Thanks so much, you both, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Hey, how's it going, Jason?
It's great to be with you, and it's great to see you again.
Awesome. It's so good to see you guys. And I was telling you guys earlier, this is one of the biggest things that I'm most passionate about is teaching kids about money. And you guys have written just a tremendous book, Investing for Kids, How to Save, Invest, and Grow Money. And this book, actually, you have it targeted for ages 8 to 12. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But we're just going to dive into some of the questions I wanted to ask you guys about the book. I'm so excited to have you guys. I've been wanting to chat with you guys about this. And but let's just dive right into it. I'm so curious to know what inspired you guys to write this book, and why was this topic so important for you guys to write about?
Do you want to start?
Sure. So, we had just finished our first book in March of 2020, which people may or may not know is an important time of year.
That's right.
And we were like, what are we going to do now? And our publisher contacted us about writing what became Investing for Kids. And we thought, well, that's going to be interesting because we don't have kids and we don't really have a lot of friends who have kids. So we're not really exposed to children per se. And, so it seemed pretty daunting to write a book that would be interesting for kids, especially the target age 8 to 12 years old, right? That's a pretty broad age range. And so we, at first we were like, I don't know if that's really quite up our alley. Like we have a blog that we write about, investing for adults. So the idea of investing for kids was a little nerve-wracking.
And I think that was also what drew us to this. It was a challenge for us. We had been writing mostly for like people in their 20s and 30s who were interested in early retirement, but definitely not towards a young audience like this. And so we really wanted to challenge ourselves, and it was during COVID. So it was kind of like, what else do we have to do? There's nothing else going on. And it was a great challenge. And to answer your other question about why it was so important, we don't have kids, but we really do care about the next generation. We really do want to help kids because we didn't have financial literacy classes when we were younger, and a lot of kids don't. So we thought this would be a great way to just share our knowledge and try to do it in a fun and interesting way for kids to really just get excited about money and investing.
That's so great. And since you guys brought up the fact that you do not have kids, this is actually, I'm so intrigued by this because I want to know, did you guys write this from a perspective of this is the advice I would have wanted to know when I was a child? Since you guys don't have kids, if I would have written the book, maybe I would have I have 2 young boys, I would have maybe written it to my kids. But I was just intrigued by that. The fact that you guys don't have kids is so intriguing to me. So what is that kind of how you would say that you wrote it to, maybe to yourselves? Like, this is what I wish I would have known when I was a kid.
I would say, yeah. I mean, in our dedication, we dedicate our book to some of our family and friends, but we also dedicate it to ourselves at that young age, because, almost like we wish we had something like this when we were that age. And we worked very closely with our editor because, at the very beginning, we told them, hey, we don't have kids, so it might be a little hard for us to relate to kids in that age group. And they said, hey, you were once that age. You were
Right,
18.
right.
So think about that. What was interesting to you? What was fun? How would you talk to yourself at that age?
Right. And we had to like take some of the examples and think about it from a kid's perspective. Like when we were talking about investing in collectibles, I can't remember what the first iteration of the book was, but I thought a little more about it. I'm like, you know what, kids at this age don't invest in whatever it was, but they like buying video games, right? So let's make that the example that we use. And we realized we don't know how much video games cost. So it was a little daunting. So
the editor helped us a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because either she had kids or she had access to a team of people who had kids. Right.
Or we went on Facebook and we asked our friends who have kids, like, hey,
right,
how much would a game cost?
And you might have been shocked to find out how much these game systems cost.
Like, what is Roblox? I don't understand what any of this stuff means, but
Okay.
But yeah, it was like, what can we do to make things interesting for kids? So we came up with the idea of having the money duo who kind of walks the readers through like important information. Because we're like, kids love comic books and superheroes, so let's kind of create our own superheroes.
Yeah, the dollar duo is what we call them, and it was just two superheroes we created. And when we created them, we came up with the idea for them, and we weren't sure because it was something that the editors had no idea we were going to spring on them. And we just said, hey, what do you think about putting this dollar duo throughout the book? And they were like, well, there's going to be a lot of illustrations, so it depends on whether our illustrators can do it and they feel comfortable and we have the budget for it and all that. And so they came back and were like, yeah, let's do it. And so they were able to draw these two characters, and you'll see them kind of sprinkled around here and there throughout the books.
Yeah, that was really cool. I thought that was a really cool aspect that you guys added to the book. And I was actually curious, since you guys came up with that concept on your own, huh? That was your idea to create yourselves as superheroes, right?
I don't know if we were imagining ourselves as that would have been pretty cool.
I mean, the inspiration was probably the Fantastic Four and the Incredibles, because we have a guy who can stretch his arms like, he could stretch $1 really far. That was kind of like Mr. Fantastic. And the other character was kind of like the Invisible Woman. She can make debts disappear and things like that. So we had some, I've always been like a Marvel comic geek since I was a kid. So like, and Allison too. So that we were able to put together our little bit of creativity.
Yeah,
together.
that was really cool. I really liked that. I really enjoyed that. So that was good. So now let's get to the real. This is the meat and potatoes question here of the interview. And you mentioned it, Dylin, just a second ago, how when you were younger, when you were a child growing up in school, financial education isn't really taught in school, and it still isn't. And I actually just read an article this past week that I'm here in Georgia, and of course, Florida is right below us. Now, the states of Georgia and Florida have their governors of each state have both recently, mandated financial education and literacy in schools, to where if you're a high school student, you have to get, I think it's a half credit. I was like, okay, it's a start, it's not really that much, but you have to take a half credit of financial literacy. And the article said there's still only 14 states, I believe, in the entire country that have financial literacy like a requirement to graduate high school.
Article, yeah, I was going to reference that. So I'm glad you
okay.
Yeah.
Do my facts sound straight? Does that sound right?
They are, yeah. Michigan became the 14th state.
That's what it was. I just saw that. Yeah, that was the headline I just read. So Michigan just became the 14th state. So that's still very troubling. So so the question is, why don't the majority of the schools in our country teach personal finance? What do you guys think about that?
Do you want to take a stab at that? I'll just say that we don't know the answer because we're not educators per se, but I think there's some theories. And so do you want to offer up a couple of theories?
Yeah, I mean, we've been contacted by a couple of teachers, who have the same dilemma. They want to teach this subject. There aren't any textbooks out there that really talk about investing for kids their age, right? So, it's I think part of it is that since teachers don't really know this information either, they don't feel comfortable teaching it, and it's not mandated by the Department of Education. So there's no money, there's no budget allocated towards this, right? So that's why you don't ever see, like phys ed or the arts taught in schools anymore, because there's no money for it. And so, until we can get more money allocated to school districts to teach this, it makes it that much more challenging. And
Right.
money is one of those topics that people are really uncomfortable talking about.
Right. Right.
What your salary is, to, how do I negotiate getting a raise, or, this actually touches on a subject we're writing about now. How do I if I'm getting a new job, how do I find out what the salary history is? How do I negotiate a raise at a new job? Like, these are things that we don't really ever talk about, even as adults. So, talking about it with kids is even more challenging.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting being bloggers in the financial space, and you're a content provider in the finance space as well. So we're used to talking about money with our friends and colleagues and our audience, but a lot of people of all ages, like Allison said, don't talk about their money and their finances. So it's a little bit taboo in a way. It's almost like talking about religion or sex or politics. It's like it's a topic that's a little difficult for a lot of people to talk about. And so I think that tradition of not talking about money and finances has been so rooted in our culture that it's a little bit hard to get our educators on board with feeling comfortable talking about it as well. And I think also getting that expertise, some people think, oh, you have to have a certified financial analyst to be able to talk about these things, but you can instill a lot of really just fundamental money education into kids without any fancy credentials. If you just know, a lot of the basics and things that, a lot of stuff that we have in our book. I mean, we're not certified financial analysts either, but we've just done a lot of research and we've done a lot of trial and error. And we put that all together in a way that is easy to understand and sort of down to earth. And I think that's the challenge, but that's sort of what we need to do, I think, as a country, to help kids in school. So.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so well said by both of you. And I just always scratch my head and I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about this. And I wonder, why aren't we teaching the most basic life survival skill to our kids in schools? And to me, this is stuff, the concepts can be started in kindergarten, how to count money, addition and subtraction. Here's a dollar. And if I take away 75 cents, how much money do you have left? Stuff like that, just basic core concepts. We don't have to, like you said, no one's saying like, hey, teach them how the stock market works. You just teach them how to, balance a budget, how to live on a budget, just basic principles of, don't spend more money than you make. I mean, just stuff like that is mind-boggling to me, why that's not taught in schools. But yeah, very well said.
We also don't, I mean, even as adults, we don't physically handle money anymore.
Right.
Like,
that's true.
I don't know the last time I used cash. Or I don't even carry a wallet anymore, right? I have a credit card, or, like I'll use Apple Pay or Google Pay or whatever. But the idea of taking money and getting money back, it's just, I don't know that
that's a very good point. And I actually interviewed I think she was a certified financial planner for my book. And she said something very similar to what you said, Allison. She said, it's very hard to teach kids about money because they're not physically seeing you. They're not physically seeing you go into a bank and physically depositing cash into your savings account. They're not physically seeing you, handle money, like tangible money, because everything's digital now, right? Everything's just, an app or, an online banking account. So that adds to the challenge of teaching kids, is that because they're not physically seeing you do anything. So you're absolutely right, Allison, you hit the nail on the head with that point for sure. So moving on, we're talking with Dylin Redling and Allison Tom about their new book, Investing for Kids. And our next question we're going to talk about is, what do you guys think? What is the most important aspect or topic of the book that you think that you guys wrote about? What would you guys say? What would be the most important thing if you had to pick one? It's all important, but what would?
Sure. I think we probably would disagree a little bit.
Okay.
because
I like it.
I'll let Allison give her answer, because I know for you, there was a part of the book you wanted us to focus more on, and we do a fair amount on it. But for me, I think it's two things. It's earning money and risk analysis. And the earning money piece of it, I've always been sort of entrepreneurial since I was younger. One of my favorite classes I took in college was about entrepreneurship. And so in the book, we actually talk a lot about, not just investing, but how do you actually make money? How do you become a young entrepreneur? How do you make a little bit of extra money mowing your neighbor's lawn or selling lemonade? And just trying to get kids to think about, what it takes to actually make that money that they're going to then go and invest. And I'm cheating a little bit because I have a second one, which is risk. And we talk a lot about that in the book too. We try to get kids in kind of a fun way to analyze, are they risk tolerant? Are they risk averse? Would they have fun on a roller coaster? Or are they more, like not willing to do anything sort of crazy? And so we talk a lot about that, because a lot of the ways that you'll invest rely on, are you low risk, low sort of return, or are you willing to go kind of high risk, high return? So those are the two things that I wanted to focus on a lot in the book.
And what do you think that I would have wanted?
Compound interest.
Oh yeah.
What, isn't it, or no?
Kind of. I mean, I think it's important, obviously, to know about compound interest, right? It's the eighth wonder of the world, according to Albert Einstein. But actually, I think even going broader, it's just the overall book, is intended to get kids excited about money, right? Like, and no matter whether you're talking about low risk, high risk, all the different vignettes we have on different investors, I think what kids really need to know is that money is actually kind of a fun topic, right? And so money is fun, and like we try to encourage people to read this book, like the kids to read the book with an adult, like whether it's your mother, grandfather, uncle, favorite uncle, like whatever adult guardian you have, just read it with them, because one of the exercises is to go to a bank and see what the interest rates are, which, obviously right now are pretty low. But, go to a bank and, see what the interest rates are. And you're hopefully not going to have your 8-year-old go and walk to the bank, but you do it with an adult. And so to try to make it like a partnership with an adult in your life and make it a fun project that you can do together. And so some of the reviews that we've seen, people are like, I didn't even know this, and now I'm learning something. So it's fun to see adults learning too. And so, in a way, I wish that we didn't have the age range on the book, because I think it, I don't know if it turns people off, or they think, oh, well, I'm older than 12, I don't need this book. But, if you haven't been exposed to this information, then you need it too. And we made it, we tried to write it more on the older end of the spectrum, but, I think even adults could get something out of this book. And so I tend to look at this book as more of a, hey, here's the exposure of this topic that everybody thinks is really boring to something that's really fun and exciting, could actually, change your life if you digested the information. So I'm not going to talk specifically about compound interest, which we can geek out on.
Yeah, that's a good one too. But I'm glad you said that, Allison, because I was actually going to bring that point up, that because your book, it says that the target age range is 8 to 12. So when I read this book, the entire time I was reading this book, I was thinking, most adults in America probably don't know the information in this book. They do not have the knowledge. They need this financial literacy. So it's not, I know it's written, it's marketed toward kids, which is great, but I'm telling you, most adults can learn something from this book. I know I did. It's, take it as you will. I don't know if that's kind of a sad state of affairs. I'm sorry, Dylin, go ahead. What'd you say?
I was just going to say, we learned a lot too, writing it. We did a lot of research because we really wanted the information not only to be fun and interesting, but we wanted it to be accurate. And we wanted to make sure that what we were putting in there was historically accurate, mathematically accurate, all of that. So we learned a lot as well.
All right. So our next question is, what advice can you give to adults who want to teach kids about money? What's the best way to start? I know for me personally, I have 2 boys. I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I mean, you can give the advice to me personally. We're just, what's the best way to start? Maybe what's the best age to start as well? What do you guys think?
The best age for the child or for the adult?
The best age for what would be the best age to try to start teaching kids like just core basic concepts of money, and what should we actually try to teach them? Besides having them read your book, of course, when they're of age and they can understand it.
I mean, I think it goes a little bit back to what we were talking about just a minute ago about physically dealing with money, and it's not just the digital assets. I think it's really important to, once a child is old enough to understand the concept of money and start using like real physical dollars to explain these concepts, I think that's really important. And in the book, we actually get pretty in depth. I think you mentioned earlier when we were talking about teaching it in school, like you can teach it at a very basic level. You don't necessarily have to talk about the stock market and investing, but we actually do. We get pretty deep into it. And at first we weren't sure if that was too far advanced. And we talked a lot with our editors about this, and they said, no, go further than you think. Go, it's 8 to 12, but really write to that 12-year-old, because the 8-year-olds will grow into it. And so some of the stuff we write about are pretty sophisticated. But I'll tell you a quick story. We were really fortunate recently to work with a local elementary school. So we got to see in action, like kids getting excited about money. And what happened was a local teacher contacted us, and she teaches 4th and 5th grade here in Oakland. She enrolled her kids. She was trying to teach her kids about financial literacy, and she enrolled them in the stock market game. It's a national game where kids are given $100,000 of money, kind of fake money, but they can actually invest in real companies in the stock market. And 2 of her students came in 1st and 2nd in Northern California. So it was a really big deal. And she invited us, and she's been using our book as part of her instruction. And we got to actually go to the school and see the kids get their award ceremony certificates. And the kid who won was absolutely amazing. He gave a speech. He knew more about this stuff than a lot of adults. But it was just really, it felt so good to see kids, and even the kids who didn't win, who were just in the audience, were just so excited about all of this stuff. And it just made me think, if we trust kids they're probably a lot smarter than we give them credit for. Right. And if we trust them and give them this information and let them run with it, I think they can do a lot with it. So
that's
what
great.
Did you think about that experience? That was
it was so fantastic to see these kids and really get to talk to them and just explore what made them excited about money. There was this one story. So when the teacher first told us about the contest, she said that she tried to emphasize to the kids that this is it's fake money, and you're going to have this money and you invest it in the stock market. And there were so many kids who came up to her and they were like, is it possible that we could use that money to pay our parents' rent or to pay for their electric bills, because money's tight in our house and we really want to like help our families out. And it was just like heartbreaking that kids were actually feeling the responsibility on their shoulders that they had to help try to help pay some bills. And so it's kind of a downer of topic, but I think in a way, if we can get kids to understand that their money is a responsibility, if anything, right, we get kids get out of the book is that they understand that money is actually something that provides a benefit to them, and they're responsible for. I think that would be great. And I know I learned about that when I was 6 or 7, and my grandmother took me to the bank and she got me one of those little cardboard, Santa piggy bank things. And like, right, I would put all my holiday, the 25 cents or whatever, like in the bank. And I think one year the ice cream truck came by and you could hear the music in the background. And so I ran out, grabbed my little piggy bank and tried to buy ice cream for everybody. I think I might've had like $4 in there, but I'm going to buy ice cream for everybody. But so that was kind of like a visceral memory that I have. And so I always go back to that. Like, I felt like, I was the big cheese because I had like money to buy stuff for people. So, and I learned that lesson when I was really young. And so I think
Right.
kids can learn things that we may not give them credit for understanding, but I think they do. I think they're pretty smart, and
So
Yeah,
true.
that tangible stuff is really important. I remember my grandmother used to give me and my cousins $51 bills for Christmas and our birthdays, and it would come in a box, and it seemed like the most amount of money you could ever imagine because there were 50 of them, but they were all just singles, but we could use it at the arcade or whatever. And I remember my grandfather had all this foreign currency, and it made me think, oh wow, maybe I can travel the world, and they actually use this currency in other countries. That's really cool. It looks different, but it's similar. So it's just getting kids to like touch and feel and understand money from different perspectives.
Cool, cool. Very good. As we wrap up today, I want to thank Dylin Redling and Allison Tom for sharing about their new book, Investing for Kids. Now, before we leave, let everybody know if anyone wants to contact you or reach out to you. You have a website, or they want to buy their book. What's the best way to reach out and connect with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way is our website, retireby45.com, because it's got our book on there, it's got our blog, it's got all our social media, and it's got our email address. So rather than throwing all that at you, just go to one spot, which is retireby45.com. And we're always happy to hear from people. And if we have time, we always get back to people if they have questions. So would love to hear from your listeners if they want to reach out.
Awesome. And I know you guys are working on another book. Do you just want to share real quick? What's the next book project for you guys?
Yeah,
you want to
it
pitch
was
it?
another COVID project that kind of came out at the end of last year, but it's going to be a personal finance book for beginners.
With a
Awesome.
lot of, it's going to be a workbook. So there's going to be a lot of activities. And so it's going to be a broader age range and a much broader breadth of financial information besides just investing. So we'll
Awesome.
leave with that for now. Yeah.
I think it's one chapter on investing, and then it's anything from how to get a job to how to buy a house. So
Perfect. Sounds very practical. When can people look out for that? Are we allowed to say that yet?
Yeah, right now the projected release date is September 6th. So if everything goes as planned, it's already written, it's already edited, it's basically going through the final stages of design work right now. So
Awesome. So September 6th, 2022, for depending on when you're watching this video. So look for it in the fall of 2022, their newest book. So thank you guys so much. Dylin Redling, Allison Tom, the book is fantastic. Check it out. If you have kids in your life and you want to learn how to teach them about money, or this is such a great book to read with your kids as well. Once they get of age, this is a good age range that you guys have, 8 to 12. That's a good age range for them to kind of just sit down and read it with an adult, kind of go through it. And like we said, adults are going to learn from this as well. I know I did. Fantastic book. Thanks so much for joining us. And until next time, this is Jason Brown saying to always remember, it's not the amount of money you make, but the margin that matters the most. We'll see you next time.